Lance Stroll finds himself off the road on the formation lap, and he has got himself into difficulty at turn number 4. I think we're going to need an aborted start here because he's stuck in the gravel, and for the second year in a row, a car finds themselves out on the formation lap. We're down to 70 laps for the Grand Prix. The start is aborted. A second formation lap now in progress.
Colapinto was also parked at the wrong grid slot.
Yeah, all sorts of procedures have been breached here, Max. So should not have started.
Yeah, you have to wait for a green light.
Lando Norris noted for a starting procedure infringement. Did Lando begin the second formation lap before the green lights were illuminated? The Sao Paulo Grand Prix is underway from the line. Good reaction time for George Russell. The lead for George Russell. The Mercedes man gets by. Esteban Ocon forces his way past the two V-Cubs, or at least he's trying to. Yuki Tsunoda hangs on to third position as Lewis Hamilton is all over the curb. Here is Oscar Piastri toughing it out with Fernando Alonso. Alonso in the green Aston Martin. And now you've got Piastri moving out of the wheel tracks. They're on the intermediate tyres. They're looking for a way by. This is to turn number 4. This is a chance for Fernando Alonso. Wide moment now for Liam Lawson. Allows Alonso to keep the place on the way in. But Piastri kept it pinned on the way out. And he's able to go past the two-time world champion.
Now side by side, the Sauber on the Haas. Ollie Behrman trying to hold on that position.
And round goes Checo. Sergio Perez spins round the Red Bull, keeps the engine going, and he will rejoin. Norris again cannot convert into leading lap 1 of the contest. And through the spray, having a go at Lewis Hamilton, fighting his way through and taking 10th place. The man on the charge, the championship leader on the attack. Max Verstappen up to P10. Let's have a look at Oliver Behrman. He got a penalty, 10-second time penalty for causing a collision.
Ollie, we have a 10-second penalty for the collision with Colapinto.
Alright, he didn't lose any time.
Max Verstappen looking to make another move up against Pierre Gasly, and Verstappen comfortably takes 9th position. And that was a replay of Max Verstappen getting past Fernando Alonso. Here we go with Max Verstappen in another league right now. Wasn't even a contest. The man showing us why he's a 3-time world champion. Max Verstappen hasn't won since the Spanish Grand Prix, and there won't be a contest there. That's the junior team not fighting the senior team. Another position gained. Lawson knows who he wants to join next year, and he doesn't fight it.
Piastri, I believe, on Lawson.
So yeah, this was the spin round for Liam Lawson from Oscar Piastri, and he got a 10-second penalty for this. Hulkenberg has spun. I can see it out of the commentary box window. There he is as the rain hammers down. And Hulkenberg, usually so reliable when the rain has gone off. Can the leaders make it through? It's getting right on the limit. This is all about keeping the car pointing in the right direction. The virtual safety car is out to neutralize the race. Control-Alt-Delete, and we go again.
All right. well done.
George Russell cannot cope with the car on the circuit any longer. The top two felt the need to come into the pits and take on new tyres, and Russell gets out ahead. Esteban Ocon rolls the dice. He's hoping now for a full stoppage with these conditions.
Look at the water on the racetrack. They've absolutely got to be contemplating calling this one, which would be devastating for Russell and Norris.
And look at the plumes of spray. Look at Lando Norris going through. It's barely raceable out there, but the British driver gets past his countryman. That is a crucial move to move up to 4th position. And the safety car is finally deployed to neutralize the race. Big crash into the wall for Franco Colapinto. Colapinto finds the barriers. It is a red flag. The race is interrupted with Esteban Ocon, the leader, but that is how easy it is. And look at the damage it did. Confirmation that Hulkenberg received outside assistance, which is why he was shown the black flag. That flag is to disqualify a driver from the race. Esteban Ocon takes us back to racing conditions, and there's a good opportunity further back in the pack for a pass. Side-by-side moves further back, but the top 5 are in the same order. Charles Leclerc got up to P6. Lawson completing the point scorers at the moment, and off the road goes Lando Norris. Lando with George Russell. They go into turn number 5, a moment of massive consequence, and who's going to get the inside line into the high-speed corner? Norris has to back out of it. Round the outside to take the place goes George Russell. There's different risk levels being taken, and there's the evidence off the road into the tarmac runoff for Oliver Behrman, who nudges the barriers. Can he escape from there to keep his race going? But you could see some drivers were cautious, some were attacking, and for Behrman, that's the result.
The tires on Lando Norris had 6. Everybody had 6. They all changed during that red flag. Oh, and we see the Ferrari going around.
Into the wall. Carlos Sainz can't keep it on the road, and he spins into the barrier to bring out the safety car once again.
And just immediately rear lockup into 8. That was a big hit.
Ocon leaving it late, but Ocon leaving the field behind. They're very tightly bunched up in the background. There's a big opportunity for Charles Leclerc. There's a big opportunity for George Russell, but a better one for Max Verstappen, who finds himself taking the lead as Lando Norris has gone off the road. The championship pendulum swings in one corner. Piastri gets past Norris, who drops down to 7th position as Verstappen goes from 17th on the grid to the lead in Brazil.
As Hamilton defending now against Liam Lawson at the top part of the racetrack. And now Lawson coming back on the inside into turn 8.
Can he find his way past Hamilton? Hamilton's deep. Hamilton's nearly off. Alonso is off as well and gaining another place.
You see the command now from McLaren to swap positions. That was expected. They didn't wait too long, which is the right thing to do now. Lando's got to be head down, attacking Russell.
And that's Russell up to 4th. And Russell is able to get past Charles Leclerc.
Don't expect that to be an issue. Russell didn't have to lift, didn't have to go off track to avoid the Ferrari, so no harm, no foul there.
In the Brazilian rain, the Dutchman has delivered a defining drive. He climbs the hill back to Grand Prix victory. Max Verstappen wins the Sao Paulo Grand Prix in 2024. 17th on the grid to the win, and punching the air with delight is Esteban Ocon, who takes his 4th career podium, and he will be joined by his teammate for his 5th career podium. And for the first time in 11 years, Team Enstone have both cars on the podium.
This is the Outlap F1 podcast featuring America's own Cody, Andy, and Deanna. Your one-stop shop for Formula One news, insights, race previews, and reviews. Join us on the Outlap. I think there was a saying called cinch it up and strap it down, and I think that's applicable for tonight. Welcome on in to the Outlap F1 podcast. This is season 6, episode number 43. It's our 2024 Sao Paulo, don't call it the Brazilian Grand Prix review show. Boy, we're going to have a lot to talk about. We've got a lot to uncover tonight. So if you're in for the long haul, welcome along. You've got Andy and I'm along with Cody tonight. It's been a long day. Let's just put it that way. I think from 4:30 a.m. local to 6:30 p.m. local was when we finally got all the championship points. I think this is even longer than Abu Dhabi 2021. That was the longest time that I know that I hadn't moved in my life trying to take in everything that happened. But this is right up there with it. I'm along with Cody tonight. How's it hanging, sir? And, just how's it hanging?
It was a long day of F1 after a long night. Andy was kind enough to host some poker last night, so we were both up until early hours of the morning. And did you actually get up to watch qualifying?
My body woke me up, has this odd sense. My subconscious has done this throughout my life. I did not set an alarm. I was not actually going to be that kind of crazy, but I woke up at 4:25, which was right when it was coming on the air. And I was flipping through ESPN channels and I finally found it on ESPNU. And I'm like, oh, all right, here we go. So then all of a sudden it's shot of adrenaline. You're awake. I'm like, I got to get my tiny screen set up. So I'm frantic, it would have been one of those epic things. Like if you actually had a security camera in my apartment, how crazily fast I got that set up. But yes, I did. And the sun was up by the time it was done. So we've been here trying to take all of this in. I actually live tweeted it. I have proof of that on that platform. So we're going to get into all of this in just a little bit. But if you haven't found our show, as always, welcome along. We're glad you're here. You can find us Twitter. We're there. That's where we put the vast majority of our stuff. Instagram, we put some stuff up there too. Discord, Reddit, and of course YouTube at Outlap F1 Podcast is the handle for all of that. If you enjoy what you are hearing and you like what you're seeing, or if you don't even like what you're seeing, but you like what you're hearing, that's the important part. Do us a solid and either smash that subscribe button on YouTube or leave us a like. Or if you're on your favorite podcasting app, a 5-star review on either Apple Podcast or Spotify would definitely help our little enterprise here come up a little bit better in search results and help us get our content to you that much quicker. You can email us, as always, chat now at outlapf1.com, or you can shoot us a DM if you have a question about anything related to F1. Outlap F1 Nation, who continues to support our show. Thank you so much to Dean Warwick, Yuri Dolchester, Paul Weaver, Quentin Warden, Kevin Kelly, Regan Stanzik, Timothy Brown, and of course, Jonathan Scott. And if you'd like to become a member of that hashtag Outlap F1 Nation and get your shout out at the beginning of every episode, if you want to monetarily support us, we would love it. $1, $5. What does that do? All goes into making the show better, purchasing some new equipment to keep us relevant, or updating the equipment we already have. It's kind of what you got to do in this business. So we would appreciate it if you'd like to do that. Last thing before we hop into all of this action from the weekend, the good folks at Manscaped continue to use our code OUTLAP. That's OUTLAP. What does that do? That gets you 20% off and free shipping from their great array of products. I can't believe I'm saying this. It's November. Christmas is coming. If you're interested in that line of products, use our code, get some money off. That's what it's there for. And as always, we're proud to bring that offer to you. All right. We shall keep you waiting no longer. Cody, headline of the day. Where are we going?
I really should have got a Harry Carey sound bit for this because I'm not going to be able to do it justice, but holy cow, what a roller coaster of a weekend this was. And it ended with my favorite driver out on top. Fantastic.
All right, very good. My headline is, I cannot remember a more roller coaster of a weekend. Just from start to finish, I think this weekend just had about everything you could have possibly looked for. Team orders, controversy, FIA decisions, race control stuff, weird procedures, guys spinning off, epic rain, epic drying, then more epic rain. If you're a fan of the sport, I think this about did it for you. And if you're not entertained by any of this, I don't know what else I can offer you at this point, because hot damn, crazy weekend, and we're going to try to unpack it all in just a little bit. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go back all the way to Friday, because Friday started the sprint qualifying when it was nice and dry before all of the strangeness started. And we're going to start with our sprint qualifying recap, and I actually have done the thing. Here we go. All right. So going out in P20, the kick salver of Zhao Guan Yu. P19, this gentleman did not have a great weekend. We're going to talk about him quite a bit. That was the Aston Martin of Lance Stroll. P18 was Yuki Tsunoda in the V-Carb. P17 was Esteban Ocon in the Alpine. Tough start to the weekend. It would get better for them. P16, Fernando Alonso. P15, Valtteri Bottas in the kick salver, almost getting out of Q1. Look at that. P14, getting out of Q1. New local hero in Brazil. I think he's got a following, folks. That was Franco Calapinto. P13, not into Q3 again. Broken record time, Sergio Perez. Wow. P12, Nico Hulkenberg in the Haas. P11, the other wow of the sprint qualifying session, Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes. P10, somebody who we did not expect to have to call his name, but it happened because Kevin Magnussen misses the weekend with an illness. Oliver Behrman in the Haas, but he did not set a lap time in Q3, so he finishes 10th. P9, Alex Albon. P8, Liam Lawson, trying to impress the powers that be at Red Bull. P7, Pierre Gasly in the Alpine. There's some of that good Alpine form. That was a harbinger of things to come. P6, George Russell. P5, Carlos Sainz. P4 was Max Verstappen. P3, Charles Leclerc. And it was a good start to the weekend for my squad. P2, Lando Norris in the McLaren. And P1, Oscar Piastri in the other McLaren with a 108.899. Smashing the track record. Our lap times were bad.
Yeah, we were so bad on the lap times. I was cringing when I saw them going around doing in the 1 minute nines, and I was like, oh no.
In the practice session, they were ahead of us in the practice session. I looked up and I went, well, we kind of thought it would rain, and it's bright and sunny out. And well, anyway, the track surface proved to be a big story throughout the course of the weekend. We will have to talk about that as well. But Cody, big takeaways from the sprint shootout.
So definitely McLaren looking very strong in the sprint qualifying, locking out the front row. Oscar Piastri, the one getting pole. And I figured when I saw this happening, I'm like, okay, well, they're going to, do whatever they can to let Lando take the win in the sprint if it pans out that way. To maximize points, Max Verstappen only made it up to 4th position, so had a little bit of work to do if he was going to limit that damage. Perez ended up being out in Q2. He was trying to go around to start another flying lap, and he couldn't make it around in time, so he just didn't even get another time in. But I think the big highlight is that Kevin Magnussen was out due to illness. They called in Oliver Behrman to sub in for him, and he's really turning out to be something of a super sub because he made it all the way to Q3. He did get in for the practice session, so he did have something going into the weekend here, but still coming into the weekend when you're not really expecting to, and being thrust into it and making it to Q3, beating out people like Lewis Hamilton, Nico Hülkenberg, Fernando Alonso. Like, he's really performing very well.
Got the call at 6:30 a.m. from Io Kodamatsu. Tells him, get your butt to the circuit because you're going in. We thought at the beginning of the weekend it might just be a one-day thing for Ollie Behrman, which would have meant that he would have done the sprint shootout and the sprint race. However, it turned out to be the whole rest of the weekend. So Kevin Magnussen, as a couple of drivers, I mean, we talked about Fernando Alonso having some, intestinal ailments earlier in the weekend. Kevin Magnussen had food poisoning, and just I think at the end of the time, Ollie Behrman's going to be in that seat anyway, and I think Haas kind of just said, you know what, we might as well just let him have unfiltered weekend, and let's see what he does. And at this point, he was doing quite well. He did not set a Q3 lap time because I think he spun out, and I think that's what caused him to not set a Q3 time. But those first 2 times were really good. At one point, I know he was like P3 in the practice session, so he came out of the box ready, willing, raring to go, and showing very well for Haas early. In terms of the front of the grid or the championship picture at this point, first blood, I would say, to the McLarens at this point. And Oscar Piastri, who I thought did an amazing job, who set that Q3 pole time on a second run. And this was Friday. This was the day. It was very hot, new track surface, very dark. So the track temperature was very, very high. And what he ended up doing was, and both McLarens did it, Piastri was able to capitalize it on his second attempt. Lando necessarily couldn't. Piastri goes out and did a double cool through the pit lane, and then they also made a bit of a front wing adjustment. And he goes out and actually, the only one to, I think, improve on a second run of the soft tire in the sprint shootout Q3 session, and pips Lando by just a couple hundredths there. So well done, Oscar. Certainly on it in the beginning there for sure. All right, so we took this little break, we re-racked, and we came back for the sprint on Saturday. And the sprint had the following. As I queue up this, here we go. All right. So not classified with a DNF due to, I think it was a gearbox failure, actually, at the end of the day. That was Nico Hülkenberg in the Haas. P19, Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin. More pain for them. P18, Fernando Alonso in the other Aston Martin. Ouch. P17, Zhao Guan Yu. P16, Valtteri Bottas. You know you're having a bad weekend when the Kick Saubers beat you in a race. P15 was Yuki Tsunoda. P14, Ali Behrman. P13 was Esteban Ocon. P12, Franco Colapinto. P11 was Lewis Hamilton. And P10 was Alex Albon. P9 ended up being Liam Lawson. And your points finishers from 8-1 in the sprint. P8, Sergio Perez getting a solitary point on the board for him. P7, Pierre Gasly. More points scored for Alpine. Keep that in mind as we keep going. P6, George Russell in the Mercedes. P5, Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari. P4, Max Verstappen in the Red Bull. P3 was Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. P2, Oscar Piastri in the McLaren. Flip-flopping around from qualifying. P1, Lando Norris takes the sprint, doing at this point what he needed to do to try to keep the championship alive. All right, we have lots to talk about for a short race of 24 laps that went only about a half an hour. There's a lot in here. Wow. Cody, what you got?
All right, so I guess we have to tip our caps here to McLaren for pretty much being in control of the sprint. Oscar Piastri leads off the line. Lando Norris hold on to second, and they're running 1-2 right away. And to his credit, Oscar Piastri was in a position to win the sprint, but I think we all figured, and apparently they even had a discussion beforehand, that when the situation allowed, Lando Norris would take the lead in the sprint to maximize the points that he could gain on Max Verstappen. Now, as we saw during the race, those top four, Lando, Piastri, Leclerc, and Verstappen, were staying pretty closely tightly packed together. And McLaren kept putting off doing the switch. They didn't do it right away. They kept putting off the switch because they figured that Leclerc and Max were following too close to Piastri and Norris to let them do that switch cleanly. And, they didn't want to sacrifice additional positions if they could help it. So they kept putting it off. A little bit into the sprint, Max does get by Charles Leclerc, makes it up to that P3 spot. And then we get to
Then
it
gets weird.
Yes,
then it gets weird. So all of a sudden we see a shot back in the pack, Nico Hülkenberg, and we see the ominous blue smoke. The ominous blue smoke of, either engine or gearbox or something doesn't look right on that car. And Nico Hülkenberg pulls off to the side. And he's in a relative safe spot, but he is somewhat still in the firing line. And double yellow flags come out, which is the correct protocol at that moment. But you couldn't tell, at least, whether or not he was, because he was he was also going down a hill. So you couldn't tell whether he was stopped and he was truly done, or if he was somehow finding a gear and could maybe get going again. And then eventually he does stop, and he's up against a wall, and it's clear and obvious to anybody if you have a set of eyeballs, that car is going to have to get moved. And someone is going to have to come and move the car. He's unable to do it himself. He's now starting the whole procedure of taking his belts off, getting up and out of the car. Meanwhile, it's just double yellow flags for a crazy amount of time. In fact, the whole field goes by once, which I thought we've learned our lesson from the Jules Bianchi thing. And go research that. Don't watch the video, but go research that if you want to figure out what that is. It was one of the hardest moments that I've ever had watching an F1 race. But I thought we learned our lesson from that, and apparently we hadn't. And then they, instead of putting out a full safety car, because to me that's what should have been the call, should have been full safety car. Sprint's over, 2 laps to go, full safety car. Maybe it ends under safety car, maybe it doesn't. But we get a virtual safety car, which, okay, fine. But between the time that Hülkenberg stopped and got out I think in real time it was something like 40 seconds. That's an insanely long amount of time. I've talked about this before. Why are you struggling to make a decision when it's obvious? And I don't know if it was the actual marshals running out to grab the car that finally prompted race control to throw the VSC, but for whatever reason they go around 2 times. One time I know with Hulkenberg out of the car, and finally threw the VSC.
Yeah, it was.
So, yeah,
it was crazy
weird.
Too long for the virtual safety car, because the yellow flags for him going off the track, and he was not that far off the track either. Yellow flags come out on lap 21, and Norris is coming around to almost start lap 23 by the time the virtual safety car comes out. Now, so there's the safety grounds of this, that yes, they're going by him under just yellow flags at a point where he is already out of the car, which is definitely dangerous. Something else that was in effect of this is, I see Hulkenberg go off the track, and I'm thinking, oh man, this is going to be a safety car, or a virtual safety car at least. It might go until, depending on how things go, might go until the end of the sprint. McLaren might have shot themselves in the foot by waiting so long to switch the drivers, because they might possibly be stuck with Oscar Piastri winning this now, and Max Verstappen in third. And the double yellows drag on for so long that eventually McLaren pulls the trigger and say, okay, switch now. And they do manage to get the switch done long after those, yellows started. And I don't think it had anything to do with, letting them get the switch or anything like that. It just kind of paints that picture a little bit, but it still kind of seemed like bullshit. On top of that, Max Verstappen apparently had an infringement on the delta he's supposed to maintain under the virtual safety car. I can't remember if he was going too fast or too slow. I think it was too slow.
No,
at one point
it was too fast on the delta
too
as
fast
the
on the delta.
VSC was ending.
Okay. And that probably was because they did go back to green briefly on the last lap, and he was trying to set himself up to pass Oscar Piastri. So he probably, in shrinking that gap, probably went too fast on the delta. He did not get past Piastri anyway. Piastri shut the door on him. But that did end up giving Max Verstappen a 5-second penalty, which dropped him back behind Charles Leclerc for the results. So kind of a double whammy for Max Verstappen here. The yellows are out long enough for McLaren to do the switch. They do the switch right before the virtual safety car comes out, and then he loses a position due to the penalty to boot.
Yeah, I mean, the part with the 5-second penalty, I thought he actually kind of self-corrected, because he does get very close to Piastri. Now, it's letter of the law, the rules are the rules, and we've all had this the last 3 weeks of learning that the rules are the rules, and this is how we're going to go, and that's fine. Letter of the law, it's an infringement. It is. But I also thought after he does drop back a bit, actually, when they actually do start racing again, and I thought he reestablished enough of a gap. He doesn't end up passing Piastri. Had he pulled the move off, so I think then a much more open and shut case at that point. But it is the delta is not anything. It's measurable. At least of all the stuff that happened, this was the one thing that I would say that was measurable and kind of open and shut. And so he gets 5 seconds. He goes behind there. Lando picks up net 3 points at this point of the weekend, and I think at this point it was 44 points the delta. For me as a McLaren fan, I'm honest to God at this point I was a little more focused on the constructors than I was Lando's thing, so it wouldn't have bothered me if they had pulled the switch off or if they really hadn't. I got it, like I understood it. I was surprised they waited. It didn't make sense to me to wait, because there was at one point I think he gets like Lawrence is 2.5 seconds in front of Leclerc, and I'm like, I almost said, do it now, do it now, do it now, do it. And they kept waiting, and it's just a common theme with them. They're scared of screwing up, and just That's just how they're going about this. And I get it when it's a constructor's thing. And if you botch it and you somehow crash both cars out, there's Leclerc going to pick up 8 points. Now it's 21 points. And, at this point, Sainz was, it would be even more. It would have been under 20 points in the constructors, and you have a whole lot of calamity to deal with. So I got it. But at the same time, you got to trust the guys that you have on the track in order to pull the move off. And Oscar did it just fine. And as soon as the call came in, no drama happened once the call came. Just make the damn call. And and you don't have any of that problem. And the other thing was, it looked like Lando would have probably pulled away, and they would have gotten the delta. They would have helped, kept Oscar in DRS, which is what Oscar was doing for Lando early in the sprint anyway. So just a whole lot of almost a major problem. Luckily, it turns out, I guess they get kind of a get out of jail free with the way the VSC went. But I didn't agree with the VSC taking as long as it was, and I'm not thrilled with the Verstappen penalty, but I get it. I get it. Letter of the law, the delta's the delta, you got to respect it. And Max was trying to do, if he times it a half second later, it's probably an amazing move.
Yep.
But he did.
It would have been kosher, but it just wasn't quite right.
Right. So, all right. So this ends the dry portion of the discussion points, because in the 3 hours between the sprint and the qualifying session, God showed up. And God brought with him buckets and buckets and buckets of rain. And all you have to do is Google Interlagos circuits this weekend, and you will see pictures of the buckets of rain. Harbingers back to 2015 Austin for me, where I learned that I had parts on me that could get wet that I never knew ever could get wet. That's what I think of every time of, taking solace under the grandstands and the qualifying session that wasn't, and rescuing people in the park. I'm sure all this happened to people there. I'm sure all of this happened. And we actually never got the qualifying to happen on Saturday. It was so wet. They did not ever deem it safe to go. Combination of a few things. One, there was lots of standing water. Even though there were certain points where the rain would let up, there was a lot of puddling. It's a brand new track surface, so all the water is sitting on top. They had diamond ground some river channels to help, but this was so much rain in such a short amount of time that just buried the circuit. There really wasn't anything you could do. So after about 2 hours of standing around trying to figure out whether or not we could get qualifying in, they finally make the decision to suspend for Saturday, and now we're going to have qualifying on Sunday. There was lots of discussion in the interim because, and here's another thing, when you write rules, you want to think things through. Why we didn't have a ironclad, this is how we set the grid if the main qualifying gets rained out, especially in light of Spa 2021, is kind of amazing. But we did it. We did it again. We found another hole in the rules where nobody knew. People were saying it was the P1 session. Some people were saying it was the sprint qualifying session. Some people were saying it was the sprint race that should set the grid. You know what it actually turned out to be? None of the above. The stewards get to pick whatever classification they want because there's nothing in the rules that codified this. OMG. My goodness. But we did it again. But what we found out was they set the time for 7:30 a.m. and then they actually did something that I did not expect them to do. They moved the start of the Grand Prix up 2 hours to try to get all of the running in, so we don't have a repeat of Spa 2021. So that meant for you and me a bright, early, or dark morning at 4:30 a.m. to watch one of the longest and strangest qualifying sessions I have ever watched. We're going to recap it here. I don't know if we're going to get into all of the detail here, but we're going to try. So the main quali from this morning lined up as follows. All right. So going out in Q1 in the main quali, still wet, very much wet. the Zhao Guan Yu in the Kick Sauber. P19 was Nico Hulkenberg in the Haas. P18, he had crashes out of Q1. Franco Calapinto in the Williams. P17, the rain not doing so well for Ali Behrman in the Haas. He does not make it out of Q1, and he had a couple of spins himself. P16, here was the shocker of Q1, Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes. Advancing through to Q2, but going no farther. P15 was Pierre Gasly. P14, Carlos Sainz. That was surprising. P13, Sergio Perez. Not so surprising. This one was P12, Max Verstappen. We got to talk about him and how he got there. P11 was Valtteri Bottas. Kick Sauber almost makes Q3. Holy crap. Look at that. But the top 10 from 10 to 1, P10 was Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin. P9, Fernando Alonso. After I think Aston Martin made a wholesale change to their setup, they finally looked like they dialed it in a little bit. P8 was Oscar Piastri. We got to talk about his adventure in Q3. P7, Alex Albon in the Williams. P6, Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. P5, Liam Lawson in the V-Carb. P4, here comes the Alpine form. Esteban Ocon. Hi, how you doing? P3, Yuki Tsunoda in the V-Carb. 2 V-Carbs in the top 10. Look at this. P2, George Russell in the Mercedes with his teammate in Q1. George Russell puts it on the front row. And P1, somehow, some way he got there. I kind of really can't believe it. He almost was out in Q1 himself. But that's Lando Norris in the McLaren. A 1:23.405, the qualifying pole time. So a lot to get into. In what was normally qualifying is an hour, this thing went almost 2. That's almost a full Grand Prix distance. The sun was up by the time this thing finally ended. Cody, big thoughts here.
So, unlike Andy, my body clock did not and will never wake me up at 4:30 in the morning. So my first reaction to this was waking up, stretching, checking my phone, and seeing the top 5 for qualifying and going, what the hell happened? Yuki Tsunoda's in 3rd, Esteban Ocon's in 4th, Liam Lawson's in 5th. It was definitely a mixed-up qualifying. We saw whopping 5 red flags during the session, which contributed to it taking so long. In Q1, we've got Colapinto going into the barriers, caused a red flag. Sainz into the barriers in Q2 for another. Stroll, and we'll get to this one in a little bit more in a minute. Stroll goes into the barriers at the end of Q2 to effectively end the session. Alonso goes into the barriers in Q3. And then finally, Albon has quite a destructive accident in Q3. Destroys his car, and it ended up, due to the nature of the qualifying happening on the same day, earlier in the day from the race, did not actually have enough time to fully repair Albon's car, and so he did not even start the Grand Prix, which was a little sad. Now, getting into the Max Verstappen bit, Max Verstappen's already got a 5-place grid penalty going into this Grand Prix because he took new engine components. I believe he took a new internal combustion engine and perhaps something else. I don't remember exactly, but it ends up resulting in a 5-place grid penalty for this. So he's already on the back foot. Remember that stroll into the barriers at the end of Q2 I mentioned? Well, that just so happened to occur during Max Verstappen's final qualifying lap, and he is then stuck, unable to finish his lap, and he is back in 12th position because of that. So ends up starting the Grand Prix in 17th. So he had a lot of work to do.
Yeah, we've seen this happen, in Baku with Norris, just when yellow flags come out and it's not your fault, it sucks. That's all I can really tell you. It's a risk. They had all made, I think, first runs. I think these were second runs, but the track was actually improving. It was slowly drying out. The rain had subsided a bit. So we went from, I think, in Q1, almost 7 seconds of delta time between Q1, which actually was started on full wets, which, again, something you almost never see. It was so freaking wet, they actually brought out the full wet tire. Let's just put that there. But anyway, and they actually tried to use it. That's the other thing. It's not like they didn't have it. They actually had to use the damn thing. But that all being said, yeah, I just think it was a matter of bad luck. I know Christian Horner was not happy about it. What race control did, which I think annoyed the Red Bull team, I think more than anybody, was because of where Stroll had gone off. It was, I think, in the first sector. So if you were already on a flyer, you could, in theory, finish your lap. I think it was turn 3 is where actually Stroll came to a stop. And so they had double yellows there. So if you were finishing a lap, they let everybody finish the lap before they threw the red flag because there was so little time on the clock. There was no way, even had they stopped it right when he crashed, I think it was like a minute 20. The whole time's a minute 23. So you're asking somebody to do an out lap and try to get around to come around. So they knew the session was done. It just caught out Red Bull and Max on that case. I'll light up race control for a couple things I already did in the sprint, but on this one, I didn't see it as a problem. But this session was like watching a roulette wheel because you didn't know who was going to go off and when. The timing screen's lighting up with yellow flags. Oscar Piastri, I think at one point did a complete 360 spin in one of his flying laps and kept going. Lando Norris could have and maybe should have been out in Q1 if not for the last gasp. And it wasn't even that good of a gasp. And all of a sudden, I just literally said, he got out. Lando got out. I think that was my exact reaction to no one here because there was no one else awake with me. But yeah, I mean, it was very, very high tense qualifying session. And if you got a break like Lando did, he definitely then took it for all it was worth and put it on pole. So as the track was drying out, I thought it came more to the McLaren setup a little bit, at least for qualifying. But yeah, I mean, anybody anywhere could have been. You could have been at the front of the grid or the back of the grid. It was really a pick'em session.
Yeah, your guy Lando definitely benefited from the other side of luck because he came out of Q1 in 15th, so just barely squeaking through. But he managed to turn that around and get pole. So it just goes to show you how things were changing constantly on track. Sometimes you had a good lap, sometimes you were slipping all over and going off. So it was just that kind of crazy set.
Yeah, crazy session indeed. All right. I feel like we should stop here simply because we've recorded enough. We're going to take a quick break. This race has a whole enough. I think it needs its own segment, to be honest with you. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to re-rack really quick. I don't know if I'll even put any sound in between this. We're just going to stop this session and then go on to the next one. But come on back. We're going to get into the race, the Sunday running. It's going to be epic, so you won't want to miss it. So come on back.
You are listening to the Outlap F1 podcast, and we'll be right back after this quick pit stop.
All right, welcome back in. This is Season 6, Episode 43 of the Outlap F1 podcast. It's our 2024 Sao Paulo GP review show, and you've got Andy, and I'm along with Cody tonight, and we just kind of gave you the appetizer, and now we're going to get into the main course, the actual full Sunday running, all done in wet conditions, and we shall start, as we are apt to do, with the back markers, and there's some significance to these back markers this time. Getting the dreaded DSQ. Not since 2007 have we seen a black flag displayed in an F1 race. We did today. So here's another new thing. Nico Hülkenberg thrown out of the race. We'll explain why in just a little bit. So it's as though he was never, ever there. He gets no lap credits. He gets nothing. He gets no points. And his day was done. The non-classified finishers not even making it to the start line. Ouch. Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin. We are going to have to talk about that for sure. The pain for the Williams guys continued. Obviously, we talked about Alex Albon was not going to make the start due to his wreck in qualifying. Franco Colapinto did manage to get 30 laps in, but he crashes out as well. That is 2 cars completely destroyed for Williams. They are in a world of pain. The 3-week break cannot come soon enough for that team. Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari, he had a bit of an eventful day. He also gets the dreaded DNF after 38 laps. Your classified finishers start with P15. That would be Joe Granu in the Kick Sauber. Fernando Alonso and the other Aston Martin had, I would say, a very painful day. The bumps affected him quite bad. He did come over the radio saying, I'll finish the race for the mechanics, but I'm in a lot of pain here. I did see some video of him trying to get out of the car. He was clearly not himself. May he get a speedy recovery for Fernando Alonso. P13 was Valtteri Bottas. So with respect to Zhao and Valtteri, who kind of had an uneventful Sauber race, and we'll rely on one of our emailers to give us the update on the Sauber team. Tony, what did you see here in the back markers?
All right. So if you thought qualifying was crazy, you had to buckle up for the race, because I was already messaging Andy what the hell is going on before the race even started. So this all starts off with the formation lap. Lance Stroll has probably the most embarrassing retirement that I've ever seen. He spins out on his own during the formation lap. Now that part I can't fault him for, because the track is wet. You're heating the tires. You're coming to terms with the grip. That part I can understand. And he was lucky enough to spin out onto, he did hit the barrier with his front wing and probably damaged it a little bit, but honestly didn't look too bad.
Yeah.
From
now keep in mind, he's already had his car rebuilt from his crash in qualifying.
So, yes, so he's already had work done on the car to get it ready for this. Now, it looks like it's not too bad. Probably, make it back around to the pits, change the front wing, start from the pit lane, do what you got to do. And he was lucky enough to spin out onto, like I said, asphalt next to a gravel pit. And then comes the stupid part, because you can see on TV that there is plenty of asphalt access road for him to get around this gravel pit, to do what he's got to do to get back to the track. And what does he do? He backs it up a little bit, he spins around, and he drives straight into the gravel track. And what do you know? He gets beached. It's like I laughed my ass off watching the replay, because it just looks so dumb. It's like, you knew it was going to happen. Apparently, all the crowd around him when that happened, they were adding to the pain by chanting, his name is Drugovich. They were chanting Drugovich, which probably just made him feel even worse about it. But yeah, definitely an embarrassing retirement. Then that leads, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, so that we've seen guys drop it on the formation lap before. And the normal FIA protocol for that normally is we go around again. We line up on the grid, we get ready. Now, he's beaching himself as Lando is getting ready to get on the pole position, and George is coming in, and the rest of the grid is forming up behind him. And all of a sudden, nobody knew what anybody was going to do, because the 5 lights could come on, they could send them, they could do an extra formation lap, they could do any number of things. There is no set protocol for this kind of thing, which is another problem, maybe.
Definitely.
But anyway, so we get the grid fully forms, the guy at the back is ready to do the green flag bit, and instead of seeing what I would have expected to see, which was an extra formation lap, you get the amber lights come on as opposed to the red lights. Usually there's a delay. When they do an extra formation lap, usually the amber lights come on, and there's 2 green lights above it that indicates that that's an extra formation lap. And then there's this down. This is the other thing. And when you're at a race and you actually see this thing and how small it is, it boggles my mind. We have this incredible technology to communicate. We have radios, we have flashing boards. Formula One is at the pinnacle of technology, but race control official messages come through on a little tiny LED color board that's about 4 feet by 8 feet. It's this little tiny square. I sit right by it at COTA, and I can barely read the damn thing. Let me just tell you that. So, and I'm right on top of the damn thing, and even I have trouble understanding it. But instead of seeing extra formation lap, I think it said start procedure aborted. And so under that situation, apparently what the protocol is everything stops. Mechanics can come back out. You've already done a formation lap, so you can't refuel the car, but you could actually put the fans and stuff back on. And it's basically a redo of the countdown to a formation lap.
Mm-hmm.
But that's normally not what you would expect in that situation. So, but again, because you just see the lights light up, Lando, I think, assumed it was going to be extra formation lap. And it looked like he launched off, and all of a sudden he's going around, and everybody else just kind of followed what he did. And then you ended up with, I think, 6-7 cars at the back that were all like, we really shouldn't be moving, guys. What do we do? And at that point, race control did come on and send everybody on an extra formation lap.
Yeah,
but because of that, now we have a start infringement possibility. But here's another part of the rule book that we've discovered has a hole in it. There's no clear penalty for that, because I don't think in the history of Formula One we've had a situation like this. Here we are again. Oh my God. It's like every little hole in the rule book, like Swiss cheese, we're finding it and we're burying ourselves in it. So now the whole race goes, we'll talk about where everybody finished in a little bit, but you have this specter of the start thing with all these guys who went, some that didn't, some that did, and then the geniuses at the FIA say we're going to investigate this after the race. So regardless of even had they called a penalty, you couldn't do anything about it. So this whole race, you have this specter of I don't know what's going to happen because of, again, we found a part of the rule book that didn't happen, or that had never happened before.
I can kind of understand putting that off to the end of the race, because they didn't know what they were supposed to do about it. Nobody apparently knew what they were supposed to do about it. They're kind of writing the book at this point. And there was so much other crap going on the track during this race. They were probably like, we don't have time for this. We're just I
even thought to myself, and it almost came to full fruition. I said, I think they did that because they want to talk to everybody to hear, what did you hear? What did you hear? What did you hear? Because I don't think it was perfectly clear. It couldn't have been. Mm-hmm. And once they said we're going to look at it after the race, I said, I bet they're looking to see if they screwed up. And maybe they screwed up and they thought they were going to do extra formation lap and maybe even said that. Now, as it turned out, what they did, the FIA didn't admit to doing anything wrong. Okay. But what ended up happening was Lando and George got €5,000 fines for a start procedure infringement. No sanction penalties beyond that. No penalty points or anything that was awarded. I think it's kind of a wash. Like, yeah, it's against the rule, but we didn't really communicate well. So this is what we're going to do. Okay, fine. But that didn't come out till 8 hours after the race ended, which was just the strangest thing. Add to that, in all of this kerfuffle, now when we get into the 10 minutes, and something weird happens at Mercedes. So Mercedes were going to come out and change the sets of tires, which you're allowed to do. And usually when the tires are warm in the blankets, they'll have them at a higher air pressure than technically is legal. And because I think it helps the air, and more air you put in the tire, it keeps the temperature in it that much longer. Perfectly legal thing to do, not an issue, no problem. However, what you're supposed to do if you're performing a check on the air pressure is you're supposed to have the tire on the ground next to the car, and you can then, in front of the FIA, let the air pressure out. However, what they did, they screwed up the order and they put the tire on the car and then went, oh shit, the air pressure, and with the tire on the car, let the air pressure out. That is technically a violation of the technical regulations. Joe Bauer says, I'm referring this to the stewards, and now George Russell and Lewis Hamilton have this hanging over their heads as well.
Now again,
that ended up in another fine.
This is all happening before the race even started.
We haven't even started racing yet. We have not even turned a lap in anger yet, and we have all of this specter hanging over it before we even start. So we did not have any certainty as to where anybody was going to finish. And it just ended up, why we still can find places in a rule book that is very detailed that I've read. I've read because I've had to read it. It's not something I like doing, but my God, the fact that we still found things that we didn't know we could find. Can we audit this thing at the end of the season and do some testing on it or something? Because this is ridiculous. This is supposed to be the pinnacle of motorsport. We don't look like we don't know what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Now, something that was pretty clearly codified in the rules was the reason that Nico Hülkenberg was disqualified from the race. He has a point during the race where he goes off. The car seems to be dead. It looks like he's going to be out of the race. And suddenly, we see him on camera and he's going again. After, I forget, virtual safety car, something's called out for him. And suddenly he's moving again. And they end up throwing the black flag for him because you see the camera shot cut to it. Some trackside marshals came over and gave his car a little push to get it going the right direction again and getting it going again. That's a big no-no. You're not allowed to have outside help to get the car going again if you can't get it going under, the normal powers. If you as a driver can't get the car going again, you are done. You're out. And so since he had that assistance getting the car going, that is an automatic black flag. And as you said, it has been a long time since it happened.
Yeah, Giancarlo Fisichella in 2007 in Canada, I think they said was the last time we saw a black flag. There was also one I know in 2005 for Juan Pablo Montoya at Canada. I don't know what it is about Circuit Gilles Villeneuve that creates black flags, but those were the last two that I could find. So, another one of those odd things that you almost never see. So, yeah, we had a whole lot of stuff hanging over this race. So we'll now get into our midfield. And the midfield was very, very, very active in this race for sure. P12, I would like to say Ollie Behrman got baptized by the rain today in more ways than one. He did not have a very smooth weekend, but he does manage still, despite all of the offs, to come home in P12. Decent showing on the day for Haas. P11, no points for him. This is becoming routine. Regardless of the conditions, it seems Sergio Perez in the Red Bull, the timer you'd think would have reached 0 by now, but we're still here. But yeah, no points for him. P10, epic battle, I thought, between Lewis Hamilton and Liam Lawson going at it in the rain. Lewis Hamilton, whose car was not very compliant. He did not have himself a very fun day, but still manages to drag that Mercedes home to get a solitary point on the day. P9, Liam Lawson, elbows out throughout the course of the weekend. He's on this trial. He knows what he's got to do, and he's doing the best that he can here. 2 points for the VCARB team here. P8, unable to convert the slightly bad qualifying into a better race result. That was Oscar Piastri in the McLaren after having a couple of different spins. Very, very twitchy car all weekend, all day long. And a 10-second penalty for a collision that he had with the aforementioned Liam Lawson that drags him down to P8 on the day. P7, the benefactor of that was Yuki Tsunoda. He moves up to P7 after finishing P8 on the road. So good points for the VCARB team. P6, championship looks to be pretty much over and done with, all but the math at this point. Lando Norris comes home in P6 after a very, very eventful day for him. I'm sure we will talk about that. P5, Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. Up and down day. Had some good parts, had some parts where he went off. Seemed like a lot of people had some ups and some downs today. So he only manages to come home in P5, but does get points on the board for Ferrari. P4 turns out to be George Russell in the Mercedes. Again, did lead the race off the start. We'll talk about his ups and downs throughout the day. Again, another guy, some big ups and downs on the day. George Russell bringing it home for Mercedes in P4. All right. Where would you like to dissect this midfield that has so many stories?
My gosh, yeah, there's a lot going on here. So I think we'll just mention it real quick. Again, Oliver Behrman did have a rough race, had some offs. He did end up with a 10-second penalty himself for a collision with, I believe it was Franco Colapinto. I'm not 100% sure on that, but okay. So he did have a collision there. That was fairly early on in the race, and he did get a 10-second penalty for that, even though he seemed to be the one who was worse off from that. But he did finish the race, and that is more than can be said for a lot of drivers this time out. So I think he did the best that he could this time, and he'll be stronger for it in the future. I think the big thing to talk about here, though, is some bad luck, perhaps, for Lando Norris and George Russell. Maybe a combination of poor luck and not the best roll of the dice or decision-making from the team. Because, as you can see, they started on the front row, and they ended up 4th and 6th. So you got to wonder what happened during all this, and it ended up coming down to a race stoppage. So Russell leads off the line. Not great for Lando's record of maintaining the lead when he gets pole position. But anyway, Russell gets the lead. Lando's following him, and they ended up running 1-2 for a while. Further into the race, after a whole bunch of chaos is going on, the rain does pick up, and
God showed up again.
Yes, yeah. And there's tons of standing water on the track. Visibility is getting very poor. Commentators start to talk about, this, it looks like it's approaching race stoppage territory. And the race had been running for a while at that point. So everyone's out there on intermediates, and those intermediates are getting worn down. And they start getting to that point where the treads get worn out to the point where they're starting to almost turn into slick tires a little bit. When there's that much water on the circuit, that's bad. You really need those treads. So it was getting to a weird point, a difficult point for decision making, where you're trying to guess what the race control is going to do. Are they going to stop the race, give us a red flag, in which case we can take our required tire change? I think in the wet race, there's really not even a required tire change, but the state of the track necessitated it. So they're wondering, should we wait for the red flag to change the tires, or should we do it now to avoid wrecking? And fortunately for Lando Norris and George Russell, they ended up going in for a tire change under virtual safety car conditions. I believe that
this
was
is
when,
the Hulkenberg VSC.
Hulkenberg had us off. So they changed their tires under that VSC, which is, honestly not a bad time to do it. They had been pulling out a little bit in front of the other cars, and you lose less time when you take a pit stop under virtual safety car versus green flag conditions. So it wasn't the worst decision for them, but you could see on the shots that as they came out of the pits, there was so much water on the track. They were crawling around, and Lando Norris makes probably the slowest overtake of the race that I've ever seen.
He actually get past Russell and all of that. You almost forget that.
But the conditions get so bad that race control decides to issue a full safety car. And during that full safety car, Franco Colapinto crashes. And at that point, I think race control just said, you know what, if they're crashing under safety car, we can't keep doing this right now. We need to wait a little while. So then they issued the red flag.
Yeah. So there was a red flag, but it was the nature of the Colapinto crash that necessitated the red flag. The reason they threw the red flag was not anything to do with the conditions. They seemed, for whatever reason, despite hearing, now again, I'm watching both McLaren onboards. Piastri was on the horn. He was pissed that they were still running in this, because he's like, guys, we're all gonna freaking crash if we keep running like this. They then put out the safety car. Colapinto has a spin, destroys his car again. But what was happening there, he hit it through the rear end. He did a full, 180-degree spin. The back end goes into the wall first. He comes back back into the track. and it's leaking oil. That's what caused the red flag. Not anything to do with the rain or anything else to happen. It was the fact that it was leaking oil, and it was that necessitated them putting the red flag because they wanted to put the oil dry stuff down. Because the rain, actually, when they put the red flag, was starting to clear off. It was a freak kind of cloud that dumped all of the progress that had been made on the drying track since the start of the race gone. So, you ended up with now a full wet track again. Certain guys actually did come into the pits to get full wet tires, one of them being Sergio Perez, and a couple others. So we actually saw the full wet tires, which was at that point the tire to be on, but that condition didn't last very long. So then they threw the safety car. Colapinto has a spin. There's oil leaking onto the asphalt. They had to throw the red flag to take care of that. We've talked many times on this show about the red flag rule and the fact that you can go in and change your tires, and they have not seemed to want to address this. And until they do, you're still going to have situations like this. So the top three who had stayed out turns out to be Max Verstappen. Actually, it was Esteban Ocon, Max Verstappen, and Pierre Gasly in that order at that point. So because of that, they get the free change of tires. Conditions were improved. Everybody's out now basically on inters, and they have the high ground of the track position in the clean air. So, yeah, I mean, it's a combination of a strange happening with the Colapinto spin, which is not something you're anticipating. I didn't think it was a strategy blunder. I saw that show up in the post-race, and I'm like, come on, what are you talking about? They had thrown a safety car, not a red flag. And again, I think in the moment it's easy to say, oh, well, they should have anticipated a red flag. No, they shouldn't have, because they've been on the horn for 3 laps when it's at its absolute worst, and they didn't. Now, I can't tell you why race control didn't throw a red flag. I thought they should have, to be honest with you. I was kind of shocked that they didn't. But, yeah, I don't know that I would call that strategy blunder. That's the red, yellow flags in Baku thing. It's bad luck. It's the stuff that happens.
Yeah, it's definitely an element of bad luck there. And, you could look at it as like maybe a good roll of the dice for, Max Verstappen and the Alpine team to decide that they're going to try to, hold on to that track position as long as they can and just see what happens. It could have gone the other way. Had there not been the red flag, they would have been out there all the longer. They might have started to lose track position because of how wet the track was and how old their tires were. There was definitely an element of luck there for them that Lando Norris and George Russell especially came out on the negative side of. As far as the changing the tires under red flag conditions, I don't know that there was really anything, in my opinion, to address here, because we've discussed in the past why you really almost have to be able to change tires under red flag conditions, because if you have tire damage or something, they can't make you go out. A lot of times we see after a red flag, a standing start, or, in this case we saw rolling starts, but you have to go out for like a formation lap or, like a leader lap behind the safety car before you get going again. You can't do that if you happen to end up with like a flat tire or some kind of damage to your tires going into the red flag. So at that point, your decisions are either, well, you're just sorry, you're screwed. Even if you make it back to the pit, you have to retire because we don't let you change tires, or you have to be allowed to change the tires under red flag conditions. On top of that, when we have a race start under wet conditions like we did today, the rule for having a required change of tires to another compound, that goes out the window, because there's only 2 wet compounds. There's the intermediates and the full wets. Nobody likes the full wets. Nobody ever uses the full wets. A lot of times the track's not going to be wet enough to require full wets anyway. So that need for a different compound goes away when you start under wet conditions like this. So, yeah, I don't really think that there was anything to address there. It just was a result of the conditions of the race that, this happened to fall in the lap of some drivers and not others.
Oh, no, I mean, I'm not here saying this is a conspiracy. This is not a conspiracy. Not that. That's not my argument at all. I just wanted to make it clear that what caused the red flag, because it seemed like there was a lot of confusion, like in the post race, where like everyone was making the leap to say, well, they should have known a red flag was coming. Mm-hmm. No, they shouldn't have, because there was no indication that they were going to stop the running until something happened that made it stop. And the thing that made it stop was the Calapinto spin with the oil on the track. So, we've seen throughout history, there have been teams that have benefited from the not having to make a full pit stop versus not. And I'm not advocating in a big way for it, but you could say, okay, well, you take, like, if you have damage, you can get a waiver that you can change a tire or something like that. And you can then do a formation lap, let everybody who wants to come in and change tires do that, and then go back out and do either your standing or your rolling start. Now, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things you can do. I just know that, this is, again, one of those rules that if you happen to benefit from it, you really benefit from it. And if you happen to not benefit from it, you don't. It's just kind of one of those things. And given the fact that I saw Oscar Piastri almost bin it going into the pits on his worn set of intermediate tires, and that I don't think TV even picked up. He was about that close from binning it really bad going into the pits. I saw it, and that was one of my, I was like, whoa, as I'm watching it take moments. And then even trying to watch people get in and out of the pits in general, it was clear that it was time to change those tires. Whether or not the Alpines or the Red Bulls would have in another a lap or two, we'll never know. It's one of those things, like I said, we'll never know. But they're the benefactors of it. So, kudos to them for sticking it out and having enough grip to stick it out when that did happen. All right, so the part of this podium might have been predictable, but part of it certainly wasn't. So here's your podium. And this is not a lie. This is real. P3, Pierre Gasly in the Alpine. P2, Esteban Ocon in the other Alpine. That's right. I said a double podium for Alpine. P1, from P17 on the grid to a win, running away with it. He's 19 seconds in the lead. Probably, if this is a championship drive, I don't really know how else to describe it. Max Verstappen in the Red Bull comes home, setting fast lap after fast lap, 26 points on the day. But amazing scenes again for Alpine. I don't know what it is about Brazil, but Pierre Gasly, what did we just do? They just got on the podium, baby. And Esteban Ocon, he's going to Haas, but why not? Wait till you see what this does to the point standings in the constructors. Holy Hannah. Ayo Kodamatsu's bad dream comes to life. The fortunes of going up and down. I think I heard someone say this could be a $50 million swing for Alpine. Talk about a home run. My God. For a team that's struggled and a team that's had some really ugly times, this has got to be a shot in the arm for sure for them.
Yeah. Throughout this whole weekend, there were flashes of good performance from both Alpine drivers. And it all came together in the Grand Prix here because they stuck it out, trying to stay out on their stint as long as possible, seeing if they could have something go their way. The red flag comes out. They've got the track position. Esteban Ocon is actually leading the race. And then they go back out on fresh rubber. They're probably not going to have to make a tire change unless absolutely necessary for the rest of the race. So at this point, it's just trying to hold on to what they got. And after that restart, the first restart, Esteban Ocon was actually doing a good job of holding the lead. He actually pulled out away from Max Verstappen a little bit.
It was like 3 seconds at one point.
Yeah, and it looked like holy crap, like maybe Max is gonna just take what he's got and, let it ride out, and we're gonna get a freak win from Alpine. And that didn't end up happening. We did get another safety car when Sainz crashed out, and on that restart, Max Verstappen made an awesome move up the inside right at the first turn on Esteban Ocon and pretty much ran off with it from there. But yeah, I was telling you over text that I was going to eat my hat if we saw an Alpine win or an Alpine double podium. And I was thinking for sure, yes, it's wet. No, there's no DRS. But these are the Alpines. We've got George Russell and Charles Leclerc and Lando Norris all behind them. Surely they're going to get by them. And no, George Russell tried. He was hanging pretty close to Pierre Gasly for most of the rest of the race. But no, they amazingly held on, both of them, to the lower two podium positions. And man, that Alpine team was losing their minds for the podium celebrations. It was awesome to pass down the champagne to the team. They were all taking their chugs. It was really nice to see. And as you said, this is a massive points swing for them. They were 9th place in the constructors with less points than they got in this race. So just total bounce back for their fortunes. And it was really nice to see. I think, though, at least in my opinion, very proud to be wearing this hat today. I think the main story for this podium is Max Verstappen, who had, I think, one of his best drives of his career thus far. I think we're going to look back on this one in the future as one of his greats, one of the greats. Started in 17th position and managed to make it back to win the race by, as you said, almost 20 seconds. Is incredibly impressive. Now, he did have a little bit of luck to go his way with that red flag, as we discussed, and being able to effectively get the free tire change. That said, he was tearing up the field. He got 5 positions gained on the first lap alone. Was picking off people left and right throughout the whole first stint of that race until we got to the red flag. And then after that second restart that we talked about, pulled past Esteban Ocon with a really great overtake on the inside and was just setting fastest lap after fastest lap after fastest lap for pretty much the rest of the race. It was making it look easy. Pulled out a massive gap on the Alpines and took a well-deserved win. I had said before that I think this championship, Drivers' Championship, would be more or less over if we saw another Max Verstappen win or Lando Norris retirement, and we got the Max Verstappen win today. And while it is not rock solid and officially in the books yet, I do think it's pretty safe to say that the Drivers' Championship is over after that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The math was a hard thing for Lando anyway. I think I've been saying even since Monza, don't make this out to be any more than what it really is, that Max could have taken 2 races off and Lando could have won and gotten fastest lap and wasn't going to get there anyway. So, and the fact that everybody just assumes, oh, McLaren has a fast car now, so they should just win everything. It's hard to win in this business, man. And Max knows that now because he's gone several months between tasting the champagne on the top step. But my hat's off. I tip my cap fully and correctly because this effort was you just watched to watch it on timing. It looked like he was just he would look like he was driving something that everybody else did not have. And whether that's the car, which I think is part of it, but I also think it's just his talent in this type of condition. That, we talked about at certain points when we have a drying track where the honey hole is. Well, his honey hole was full on wet because the first lap where he's finding grip, where nobody else could ever even think to try to place their car, just shows you that he was on it. And I saw after the first lap, he's up to 11th. I said, yeah, that's probably doesn't bode well for the rest of this one. So you knew he was going to factor into it. My only regret is we didn't see an actual battle for it, but I don't think, given where it was happening to Lando, and McLaren made a rear wing change based on the wet conditions, which I didn't think helped them out, because the things that helped them in the dry was they had brought a rear wing that didn't have the mini DRS controversy around it, but it definitely did help their draggy problem. The McLaren car this year has always been great in the slow, twisty bits, but really not so good in the straight. What that wing in the dry was doing was helping them. Their best sector, believe it or not, was sector 3, which is where you're all flat out going through the main part of the lap. When they changed the wing and the conditions changed, that advantage went away, and it's really hard to try to make up lap time in the twisty bits when you really only had one reasonable lane of running, because new surface, wet track, all of that. But I give it full props to Max for being able to find other lanes and find other places of grip. Even if you don't have the red flag intervention, he would have been a factor in this race. There's no doubt about it in my mind, given where the pace of that thing was. It was just a question of, would they have squabbled over things, and could it have ended in tears for one, if not both of them? But yeah, tough day at the office for the McLarens, but I'm buoyed by the fact, again, I never thought, and I've been consistent, I never thought this was a real drivers' championship fight. The math was always against Lando. The fact is, they didn't come onto the scene until race 6 of the season. And to try to pull that out, I admire the attempt. I'm glad that we had it. It's been a real fun ride, but look, it just probably wasn't in the cards this year. And unless Max has some sort of a major moment moving forward in these last 3 races, it's not going to happen this year, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. My focus on this race was actually the constructors, and believe it or not, McLaren actually extend their constructors lead slightly against the Ferraris. So that was my big focus on this weekend. I kind of said, you know what, it's Max's to win, especially once the conditions changed. I said, as soon as that epic rain hit, I went, well, all right, well, at least we got it up. We got it done in the sprint. Maximize that. You never know what's going to happen in the rain, and Max is awesome in the rain. So, yeah, fair play. Great drive. Like I said, I knew on the first lap, he's up 6 positions. I said, oh, okay. And it's purple on the timing. And it's just, he's doing things that just other people can't do. And that is the brilliance of this guy. Whether you like or don't like him, and again, I'm also consistent about this. You have to respect the talent. That's the talent you saw.
I did start to get a little nervous about the Drivers' Championship after the sprint race and then the way qualifying went, because I figured, even if Max manages to gain half the places, he's still going to lose a big deficit to Lando if he can manage to win the race. And yeah, that all got turned on its head by the end. That's not to say that, Lando didn't drive a good race. He did make a few odd mistakes here and there. Overall, did a great race though. Just couldn't keep it going as quickly in the wet as Max Verstappen, and just had a little bit of luck go against him.
And all right, I think that's where we will leave this. So, what a race! Like I said, this thing had, I think, a taste of everything. Why do we follow this sport? Because you get a taste of everything. So we're going to take another break. We're going to re-rack. We will now recap what this does to those standings, the drivers, the constructors. The constructors look massively different at certain places than they did before we started this round. And if you had Alpine double podium and you had bet that, you should be like throwing the champagne around Las Vegas today, man, because holy Hannah, what a call for that. Because I did not see that one coming. But anyway, we're going to come back. We're going to talk about that. We're going to then open it up to your thoughts on this weekend. We've got some good comments in here. Fan email segment. We'll hand out some awards. I do have a lot of things I want to throw in the rubbish bin. None of them involve, well, some of them involve Max, but none of them involve him personally. Let's put it that way. And then we'll talk about predictions. Not as rough as it's been. We both definitely scored points. We both had some good moments there, so we'll talk about that. And then we'll cue what this last triple header of the season is actually going to be, where we're going. Las Vegas is beckoning, odd times, race starting at midnight, 2 a.m. times all over again. I guess we'll be all here for it. So come on back. We'll get into all that in just a little bit.
You are listening to the Outlap F1 podcast, and we'll be right back after this quick pit stop. Grab your flu powder, broomstick, or apparate to your favorite audio streaming service to join the discussion on Hogwarts, a podcast, where Dan and his friends have in-depth chapter-by-chapter breakdowns of each Harry Potter novel. Join the group as they dive into the magical world and discuss plot points, analyze character development, and occasionally go off the rails. Whether you're a muggle who's new to the series or a pure-blood wizard who won't need a remember-all, Hogwarts, a podcast, brings everyone to the Great Hall for a magical discussion. Hogwarts, a podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, welcome back in. This is still Season 6, Episode 43 of the Outlap F1 podcast. And if you have stuck with us to this point, number one, thank you. And number two, welcome back in. You've got Andy and I'm along with Cody tonight, and we just wrapped up talking. I think we got all the good stuff in about the Sao Paulo Grand Prix, but now it is time to turn our attention to the point standings for the drivers and the constructors. Cody, I'll let you take the drivers, and I'll chime in with the constructors.
All right. So, still at the top, and with a considerable gap now, hopefully enough to come close to sealing in the championship. We've got Max Verstappen for Red Bull with 393 points. In second place, Lando Norris for McLaren at 331. So a difference of 62 points. I believe the math works out that if Max manages to outscore Lando in the next race, he will seal in the Drivers' Championship. Meanwhile, Charles Leclerc is in third place for Ferrari at 307 points. He is, if my math is correct, now mathematically eliminated because he is 86 points behind Max Verstappen. 86 points just so happens to be the maximum number of points you could score over the next three races. If you won all three Grand Prix, you won the sprint race, and you got all the fastest laps. And even then, he would tie Max on points and lose the tiebreaker for having less wins. So he is eliminated. Oscar Piastri in fourth place in the other McLaren at 262 points. Carlos Sainz in fifth place for Ferrari at 244 points. George Russell, pretty good race for him this time out. He's in sixth place for Mercedes. He overtakes Lewis Hamilton in the points now. George Russell is at 192 points, and his teammate Lewis Hamilton is at 190. So very close between the two of them. Sergio Perez hanging out in eighth place in the other Red Bull at 151 points. And then that big gap down to Fernando Alonso in ninth place for Aston Martin at 62 points. And Nico Hülkenberg, despite being disqualified from this race, is still hanging on to 10th place for Haas at 31 points.
Nico Hülkenberg hanging on. Here's what that Alpine double podium did. And this, normally we don't go beyond the top 10, but I just want to kind of share this. So Nico Hülkenberg has 31. P11 is Yuki Tsunoda on 28. P12 is now Pierre Gasly on 26. And P13 is Lance Stroll on 24. P14 is Esteban Ocon at 23. So you've got five guys who could potentially still get that top 10 spot. I don't know if that matters to any of them, but I am sure there will be marking amongst the grid for sure. But anyway, into the constructors we go, and we have some big changes to talk about here. However, as I mentioned, still in first place, McLaren Mercedes holding on to that. They are up to 593, thanks to the good sprint and getting both cars home. Sometimes that's what you got to do. P2 is Ferrari. They are up to 557. So that is a delta of 36 points. 36 points. P3, Red Bull. looks like that may be where they're going to end up unless they can get Sergio Perez start scoring some better points. But they are up to 544 points on the year. P4, this is the one that I can tell you we know what's going to happen. Mercedes will finish P4. They are on 382 points. Mathematically not able to catch anybody in front, or anybody behind them cannot catch them. So P5 is Aston Martin. They remain on, or they are up to 86. They actually did get a couple points, I think, in the, maybe not. But anyway, they're on 86. P6. Here's the change. From P9 to P6, it can all change in one race. It is possible. Alpine Renault, 49 points. They bagged 35, I think. I think they were the highest scoring team on the weekend, and that includes the sprint. Holy Hannah. Talk about a weekend. 49 points for them. They leapfrog Haas, who check in with 46. That battle's not done, by the way. Don't think that Alpine's just going to waltz over to P6. Haas is going to have something to say about it, because both those teams are showing some really good qualifying pace, and the Haas's, I think, have had better race pace throughout the course of the year. So that's going to make the midfield is going to get super spicy now. And now the V-Carb team is right on Haas's rear end. They check in with 44 points. So 49, 46, and 44. P6, 7, and 8 in the constructors. Woo, that's going to get spicy. P9. Boy, these are the hard luck losers, man. And they have a spare part problem. The break cannot happen soon enough for them. I don't know how they're going to manage to get all these spare parts made or stay under the cost cap because of it. Williams, Mercedes, 17 points. Lots of issues for them. James Vowles is going to he's got some headache, man. I just feel for him. And Kick Sauber. What else can you say? We said the only chance for them to get points was to have a deluge biblical rain race. They got it, and it doesn't matter. 0 points. That's more than likely where they're going to finish, given where they're going to go the last 3 weekends of the season. But they remain in P10 on 0 points. All right. So you've heard our takes on all of the happenings of this race weekend. We are now going to open it up to your takes on what you saw this weekend. Fan email segment. Cody, I'll let you go here. What do we have and what do we got?
All right. Our first fan email comes in from Dave Doherty. Thank you, Dave. And he says, well, this weekend has to be remembered in F1 history as the most dramatic one. I personally had always loved this track when it comes to the racing. The sprint format was good. My only complaint that I have is, why did McLaren bottle it on the sprint race? Oscar should have let Lando pass at the start of the race. Can't believe the Grand Prix went sour for McLaren and Williams. What was all that about on the DNF? I feel bad for them. And oh yeah, can someone get Lawson in the Red Bull, please? Yeah, a few good points. There are lots of good points here. Did think the sprint format was really good this time. Sprint was very exciting. I wouldn't really agree with McLaren having bottled the sprint race. They came out of it with a 1-2 in the order that they wanted. So yes, I think that maybe they shouldn't have held off on doing the switcheroo until like the last minute before the safety car that we weren't really sure we were going to get, or VSC, I should say. But yeah, they had the results to show for it. 1-2, Lando in front. They got what they wanted. So I would say that wasn't bottling it at all. Just maybe a little too much hesitance. The Grand Prix definitely went sour for them, though. Like I said, a little bit of luck went against them. A little bit of mistakes here and there. Oscar did get that 10-second penalty. Lando had a few moments where he went off the track, but he still held on to it. And yes, for Williams, they're in trouble. They had so many wrecks this weekend. They couldn't even put together Albon's car in time for the race, and that was, probably more than anything caused by the fact that the car was so damaged, and qualifying was on the same day as the race, so it wasn't a lot of turnaround time for that. But even so, a lot of money getting sunk into repairs for them, and they've, fortunately for them, got 3 weeks now to the next race, so they at least have some time to get things put back together. But it's going to be a rough one for them. And on top of that, they seemed like they were going to have a good handle on P8 in the championship, possibly. And now Alpine just breezes past everyone. So now they're relegated to P9. This is a really hard one for them.
Yeah. There's a slow motion shot of one of the Williams mechanics when Colapinto spun. Oh my God. I mean, talk about, and you feel the pain because first of all, I was shocked that they even got one of those cars put back together, let alone both of them, because I saw it in qualifying and I'm like, they might not even make the start. And you couldn't have blamed them if they didn't. Yeah, it's just such a logistical nightmare because they're in the flyaway races. It's not like they're in Europe where they can, try to get something from here to there and it's easy. You got to clear customs. You got to do all this other stuff. It's a logistical nightmare that some poor soul who works on the Williams payroll is going to have to try to manage for the next 3 weeks. So, I just hope that they come through it okay. I mean, they will have prior specs, but they're obviously not going to perform as well. So that's, I think, the where you're going to have the problem is they can make it to the end of the year, but it's just they're going to be like crawling as opposed to trying to run when they're trying to build momentum for the future. And for Alex Albon, who needed to have a good weekend, he did not. And Franco Colapinto, who, was trying to ride high from all of his good effort, this is a bit of a reality check. I think Ali Behrman and Franco Colapinto got a reality check this weekend that it's not just, you don't just breeze into this sport because it can bite back at you. As to the McLaren comment, the only thing I would say is what I want, and I don't want to start like doing a postmortem because there's a constructor fight that they got to get through first. So let's leave it there. But what I want them to do moving forward is they have to be willing to take a little bit more risk when it comes to a lot of how they operate. Because especially, I think once they got to the P1 and the constructors, you could tell that that's where the focus was. And yeah, they were doing the team order bit and it was the time to do the team order bit. And I understood that. But when you got a 2.5 second gap and you've got two fully competent drivers, they can handle a swap of positions. It's okay. You don't have to think of the complete oh shit scenario all the time. And the only part that I'm afraid of is I don't want them to try to put handcuffs on both these guys, in Oscar and in Lando, to where it affects how they go racing. Because it felt at different times throughout this season that Lando was trying to be extra cautious, where it's like, again, I keep going back to what I was screaming at Coda. Get to the goddamn inside. Why wouldn't you do that? Because, yeah, it's risky. And, yeah, but you know what? It might be brilliant. And Lando has shown he knows how to do an overtake, and you've got that. Oscar has shown he knows how to do an overtake and keep it on the black stuff. And maybe it bites you once in a while. But, that to me is part of the game, and you got to try to get some more aggression into it. I am very excited still for the prospects of this team moving forward in the next year, starting out hopefully at this level. Lando and Max can go at it again on completely equal terms, and I'm all there for it. But I will tip my cap. Max did everything he needed to do to get this to the end, and it's not over mathematically, but I'm going to tip my cap to Max on this one.
Mm-hmm. And I do agree with you that reality check is probably the perfect term for Behrman and Colapinto after this one. But I think they'll still come out of it for the better.
Oh no, I think that they will develop from this, and you're not going to see that. But the only way to experience biblical rain in a Formula One car is to experience. You can't simulate that. There's no amount of sim time. There's no amount of video gaming you can do that simulates that feeling in that car. So they're going to come out and be better drivers for it in the end, but you had to go through this, it seemed like.
Mm-hmm. Thank you again, Dave. Our next email comes in from Rachel Fleming. Thank you, Rachel. And she says, so that wasn't dull, and yet I really didn't like the race. Ooh, hot take. Maybe it's because I am a big Lando and George fan, and seeing Max win by a mile is really gutting for me. Well, I'm sorry, Rachel. I am a big Max fan, and seeing Max win by a mile is simply lovely for me. Max was outstanding. he was the driver to beat. That is the driver's title over now, surely. Now the real fight carries on for the Constructors' Championship, though I do think he will be buying Colapinto a huge Christmas present and possibly a Red Bull drive. Let's see. What a result for Alpine. They have jumped from 9th to 6th in the Constructors. What a moment from them. 33 points in one race. However, Aston Martin, Williams, and Ferrari do all this hard work in 3 hours to get the cars running, and barring Alonso, those drivers who crashed in quali then crash in the race. Most of the anger should be aimed at Lance Stroll, to be honest. What a waste for the team. Definitely agree there. Perez watch. His teammate goes from 17th to 1st, and he again fails. He is giving Red Bull so many excuses to fire him. Yeah. Sauber watch. Oh, I love how we've got these. Sauber watch. Okay, came last and third to last, but on the road, but did not go off and cost the team millions in repair bills. I guess if there's anything positive to come out of the weekend for Sauber, that would be it. And finally, God knows what the actual result, barring the top three, is. Total fiasco at the start. And what on earth were Merck thinking with the tire pressure? Yeah, I think that was just maybe an absent-minded rush thing for Merck. And they ended up getting away with it, even though, you were telling me that it is a pretty clear and cut technical infringement. They did not get a time penalty applied to them for this. So they really did kind of get away with that one.
I actually thought they were going to get DQ'd because usually,
rough.
I mean, it's. I always compare this. I say you have the sporting regs, which is the big book of little consequences, because you've got lots of, that's where your fighting rules, your overtaking rules are all in the sporting regs. Comes to the technical directives, that's the little book of big consequences, because it's either you're in or you're out. I mean, that's almost usually technical infringements, especially post-race stuff or pre-race stuff, is like, you didn't do this, and therefore, it's like you not providing a fuel sample. Well, you get kicked out for that. That's pretty much cut and dry. Now, I don't know that the last time we've seen an air pressure issue like that, and it is a common thing amongst the teams, and apparently the only difference was McLaren did the same thing, but they did it with the tire off the car, where Merck did it on the car. So that's the issue there. But again, I think it's rare that you see a mitigating circumstance, but because I think it was such a unprecedented situation at the start, I think they kind of let it go, because there was something in the ruling, I think, that said that one of the doors that should have been opened wasn't, which would have prevented a mechanic from possibly getting there or something like that. It was, again, mass confusion, I think, up and down the grid. You've got mechanics who are trying to scramble to get all that equipment off of the grid, and then are scrambling to get it back on. It kind of reminded me of Monaco when, a couple of years ago, when the skies opened up and nobody knew what the hell to do, and nobody understood what was happening either. So, yeah, it is kind of one of those things. Rachel, I will feel you. I didn't like the results of the race. I'll accept the results of the race, but I didn't like it. And as a fan, I'm kind of smarting at the moment, and I'm trying to do my best to stay positive. But yeah, and like I've said before many times, I didn't think it was ever really going to happen. It was kind of interesting that it got even as close as it did, because at some point you knew something. A guy like Max Verstappen isn't going to go 5 months without taking a win. I think that's just not something that was going to happen given the form that he's been on. So yeah, I feel you there, Rachel. You and I were commiserating about it a little bit offline as well. But anyway, yeah. And as far as the Aston Martin, Williams, and Ferrari, I don't know what to say about Lance Stroll. His dad owns the team. I've not seen that. That's a pretty bad own goal. Whereas like the road is here. All you had to do was stay on the road, and why you thought going over the gravel when it's been wet is a good idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much a rookie mistake. Very much a rookie mistake from someone who is very much not a rookie. He is, at this point, a veteran of the sport. And yeah, that just seemed extraordinarily silly, especially when it seemed very clear that you could just go around it. I don't get it. But thank you, Rachel, for your email. All right, our last email comes in from the Formula. Thank you, Mr. Formula. And he says, Alpine dominance is really starting to get stale. In all seriousness, though, what a wild weekend. Max's championship is pretty much sealed now, and you could see it in his face and hear it in his voice. He's ecstatic. Rough go for McLaren. Can't have that many mistakes. Love Lando. I love McLaren. This was a bad performance from all parties. Now, I definitely agree with the Max bit. You could tell that this one meant a lot to him. Normally, he seems pretty calm and composed, probably because of how many races he's won in the last couple of years. You know, when they tell him, great job on another win. Oh, yeah, thanks. This one was simply lovely. But no, he really sounded happy over the radio. He looked really happy on the podium. Big smiles, lots of emotion. And it was really good to see because he's not had the dominant car like he's had the last 2 years and, was put under pressure to defend his championship. And today he did it. And I think he sees that fourth consecutive championship just in front of him now. So yeah, great go from Max this time. I wouldn't really, again, say that this was a bad performance for McLaren. They had some bad luck in the Grand Prix, for sure. And they did have some, little sloppy points, like that Piastri penalty, the few times that Lando went off the track and lost positions. It's a really rough race, and they managed to keep it on track to the end and still get more points than Ferrari did, which, as you've said, the constructors is where you make the money, and they are opening the gap in the constructors. That's probably the more important thing for them to do right now, because that is something that they are leading and they can win. And as you said, the Lando Drivers' Championship would have been gravy. It was a long shot. So I think, and they also got 1-2 in the sprint race. So I think they actually came out of this pretty good. I'm sure Lando is gutted that his, hopes for the Drivers' Championship are now, astronomical. But he's gonna come away from this. It's looking like McLaren will, knock on wood, probably win the constructors' title, and they can take that and they can come back next year with this car, which is very strong, and hopefully have a very strong car at the start. I'm really looking forward to next season. I think it's with how close a bunch of teams have gotten to each other now. I'm really hoping we go into next season at the start with Red Bull, Ferrari, McLaren, hopefully Mercedes, on relatively equal footing. And I think that would be a great cap to this regulation.
Yeah, I mean, it all looks like it's going to bake into that. And that's, you always hope that it cooks. And if the last set of regulations is anything to go by, it definitely looks like we're going to have some major league battles, and you reset the calendar, you set the thing at 0, and let's see who's quicker. And testing next year, I'm all about getting up for watching 8 hours of that and try to analyze and see what's good, what's not so good, and who's got it and who doesn't. But I don't know that. Like, I understand the sentiment where it's like, Lando has the not great race start and then the not great restart, but at least he did manage to get it home, and which is better than some other certainly couldn't. And if you want to get on him for the tactical call of making the wing change, which I think dramatically affected that car, that's fair if you want to, but I also think you might have seen them go spin off and have no points and have Ferrari write them on the constructors. And, the McLaren issue was really, I think they were stuck trying to fight a two front war. And you never win when you're trying to do that, because you can't be focused on where you need to be really, truly focused. So that's kind of my thought on it. I'm just, again, I like I mentioned when I was talking with Rachel, it's the same thing. I'm disappointed, but I'm still buoyed by the fact, like, hey, we got 5 wins on a season. We hadn't won more than one in 10 years. And we're leading the freaking Constructors Championship, which is something we haven't done in 25 years plus. So if you're going to ask me would I have taken this at the beginning of the season, hell yeah, sign me up. I'm good. The fact that, when it comes to people who, do all the criticizing, and the formula isn't doing this, by the way, he's not. But when I hear the criticizing of Lando, I go, yeah, but he's going up against a machine in Max. It's kind of what he is. He's kind of been designed to do that. And then he goes out and does it, and then people are shocked. You shouldn't be shocked that he does what he does, because this is what he's been literally born and bred to do. So, and he's, as we've seen, he's a guy that you have to keep bringing it for, keep having it, keep put the pressure on. And I think the only way that you're going to beat somebody like that is you have to be on it from the beginning. And when you start with a 6-race hole, I think the delta was something like 50 some points before Miami. That's almost unheard of to kind of come back from that. And the fact that you almost got there, and it's still, again, even had Lando come home P2 and lose only 6 points, it still would have been a stretch, because I think at that point it's back to 50. So, I mean, come on, and I get, the only part that annoyed me with this whole thing was everyone saying that it was just kind of fait accompli, that, oh, now McLaren are the next ones. It's hard to win in this business, man. It's not a foregone conclusion. You still got to do it. All right. Well, thank you so much to everybody who did contribute. I would appreciate it. We love talking about Formula One with all of you. For those of you who interacted with us over social media over the course of this weekend through all of the sessions, and Lord knows there were lots of them. Thank you. We do enjoy all the interaction. All right, so it is time for our awards. We're going to start with the rubbish. I have lots of things that I want to throw in the bin. But Cody, I'll let you go first. I like yours too. So what you got?
All right, my rubbish award is probably not too much surprise here, going to go to Lance Stroll. You can't make those kind of mistakes when you've been racing as many seasons as Lance Stroll has. And it's stuff like this that is the reason why everyone makes fun of Lance Stroll and hates the fact that he is in a position where he probably won't ever lose his seat until he wants to, because his daddy owns the team. So yeah, it's painful that that seat isn't going to someone more skilled and more qualified to do it. But yeah, he definitely made a little bit of a fool of himself this week.
Yep. All right. So I actually have 3. One of which is, and I don't know how you managed to pull this off, but Brazil Circuit managed to do it. I don't know how you repave a track and somehow make it bumpier. Is not the entire point of you repaving a track so that it takes the bumps away? I mean, even Circuit of the Americas, that is in the worst possible spot and has land that heaves and hoes and all this, at least understands how to get rid of a bump. So that you took a track that was such a great overtaking track and really turned it into a single lane highway for a lot of people. Now, again, I give full props to Max for doing what he did. He was the only one that kind of made that work, but nobody else really, it seemed, could pull a whole lot of overtakes off. The only real overtake I saw was Lando on George, and that was at 40 miles an hour coming out of the pit lane there. So, yeah, just a strange thing. I hope they address that, because Interlagos is such a great track. The crowd is great. Just it deserved better than that type of a repavement thing. And it should be a lesson that, like, you shouldn't be repaving a track within like 3 months of F1 running there, because it just leads to bad things. See Turkey 2020 as a perfect example of what not to do. Number 2, and this has been a long-standing rant of mine and it's going to come out again. The FIA really needs to have some sort of active communication when they are going to do things like do investigations after a race. I don't care that they're taking their time to make the decision. It's fine. But how about you just let us know when the news dump is coming? That would have been insanely helpful for, all of the people who are across the world who are actually getting paid to cover this thing. And, bums like me who like to talk about it too and actually be informed. Just, expect decisions in 2 hours would have been perfectly legitimate, and I would have been fine with that. But when you start your day at 4:30 a.m. and your day isn't done until 6:30 p.m., and you don't know where everybody's going to finish, and you're trying to do a recording to react to something that you don't know that might be changing, that annoys the shit out of me. Do better. Come on. 91 different stewards' documents this weekend. Holy crap. Now, I get it. They had a lot of shit to deal with over the course of this weekend, but just help us out a little bit. That would be nice. And then finally, and this has kind of been bubbling up, and I've seen it happen across some social media, but there was a lot of ass showing on both sides of this, whether you want to call it a Lando Max rivalry over the course of the last 2-3 weeks. And I think the fandom needs a break. The triple header after the 4 weeks of build up just, I think, made for a cauldron of absolute suckage. And there was a lot of things I've seen from both sides that really, really, really annoy me. And, we talked to Giles Richards, and his whole book is about the people who make the sport that we love and love to talk about, and that it's a community, and that it's in many ways a family. And I don't care what team you're on at the end of the day, but nobody who does this, who spends 6 weeks away from their families at a given go, should be dealing with online abuse or any sort of negativity being shown their way from a supposed supporter of somebody else's team. That shit just annoys the absolute crap out of me. And we were getting down. I started the weekend thinking like, okay, we need to really be careful because we're coming on to that Abu Dhabi 2021 feel of just shit on social media, and it felt like we were going to get there. And I'm just here to tell you, I don't care who you claim to support, but if you're abusing anybody who runs this sport or is in this sport, you're not a fan to me. I don't need you. You can go sit on the side and you can go do something else with your time, because that's just absolutely the worst type of behavior I can say. So fuck off if that's what you're going to do. So yeah, let's just hope everybody calms down. Let's enjoy the fact that we got a driver's championship, even a fight, for what it was. You should be happy for that. And you obviously come back and you were obviously entertained. So that's what this is about. It should not be about that. It just drives me crazy. So let's be better across the board.
Totally agree.
All right. So we'll move on to our analysis paralysis. Cody, I'll let you go first. I've been ranting for a bit of time here. So what you got here, sir?
Yeah, Andy needs to take a breath after that one, but definitely agree with you on those points. All right, my analysis paralysis award is race control had a rough one this time out, but I'm specifically going to give the analysis paralysis to that delayed VSC call on the Hulkenberg DNF during the sprint race. I really think that it was pretty clear right away that we were going to need some kind of intervention beyond just yellow flags. For that, he was stopped pretty close to the track. He was definitely stopped. He was going to need to get out of the car at some point, and they were going to have to move it out of the way. So it seemed pretty clear that was what was going to happen, and yet they just let time drag on and on and on. And, I can understand wanting to let the racing and the action go on as long as possible. But it was turning into a potentially dangerous situation. So I think that they really should have made that call a little more promptly. And then you would have, if you made that call more promptly, you get people out there to take care of business more quickly, and maybe you get back to racing more quickly so that you're not going back to green conditions with like 1 lap left or part of a lap left.
Not even a lap.
Yeah,
I think it was
even
like
a whole lap left.
2/3 of a lap.
Yeah. So, yeah, that is my analysis. Again, analysis paralysis award.
Yeah, I'm with you here. I would just say I think race control overall had kind of a bad weekend. And the advice that I would give is you call it like it's the first race of the season. If it's done this way in Bahrain, it should be done this way in Austin. It should be done this way in Brazil. It should be done this way in Abu Dhabi. When you guys go rogue, that's when bad shit happens. I don't understand. Like, if you're going to say we're going to throw double yellows to let everybody finish a qualifying lap, that's fine, but be consistent about it. Don't do this. I'm only going to do this because I feel for somebody here, or I don't feel for somebody here. The good luck and the bad luck, to me, if you are consistent, it will even itself out and everybody will understand. If qualifying sessions have to end and people get bumped because they didn't set a lap earlier in the session, that's on them. That's not on you. So just call it like it's the first race of the season. Be consistent. It's not that hard. All right. So we'll move into our dark horse of the day. And I think I put on here, if this isn't Alpine, this award is done. So I'm giving this one to Alpine for the shocker double podium that, it's going to come out. The story, I guarantee you, is going to come out. There's going to be somebody who put like $5 down on Alpine to get a double podium on, stake or some online casino. And you're going to learn their names from it. But whoever it is, if you want to, spare some scratch, $1, $5 all goes into helping the show make it better. So come on. We know you got it. But yeah, Alpine, great result for them, for a team that has gone through a lot over the course. I think I saw Bruno Famine, who started the season with that team in Bahrain for the 8 hours of Bahrain in WEC. So, there's been turmoil in that team. We've criticized them a lot of times. Got to give it to them this weekend. Great call. Top notch.
Yeah, definitely agree with you. It's got to be Alpine for the dark horse this weekend. It resulted in me sending you a wonderful picture of me trying to eat this hat because I had to say it that I would eat the hat. So, yeah, fantastic performance from them. In the end, it's probably going to make them millions of dollars. So, if nothing else, that is a massive bonus to them. And hopefully a big boost to the team's confidence and the driver's confidence as they're going through all these changes with, the team structure and the dropping the engine program and 1 year drivers leaving for another team. Like, there's lots of crazy stuff going on at Alpine, and it's good that they got this result to, hopefully give them that boost to keep going forward.
Do I have your permission to possibly post the picture? It's up to you. If you don't want me to,
go for it. I don't think there's anything embarrassing in there. It's in my bedroom. You might see like a tissue box, for blowing my nose or something, but go for it.
All right. So here we're going to do the total podcast thing. If we get 20 likes on either the audio or the video YouTube, because I want to percolate that, I'll post the picture.
Right.
There it is. So, Outlap Nation, it's for you. If you want to see the picture of Cody eating his hat. So just to tell the story, he said he did it to himself. He said, if Alpine pulled this off, I'm going to literally eat my hat. And I just told him, I said, be careful what you wish for. And then, of course, the race ends. And I was trying to make myself feel a little bit better. So I'm like, well, remember what you kind of said. And then, damn, you sent me the nice picture. So yeah, we get 20 likes in a combination, audio and the video. I'll post a picture of Cody eating his hat for a Dark Horse Award. And way to go, Alpine, in all honesty. All right, driver of the day. I think we've got full consensus here. This is Max Verstappen's. I think I told you over text. I said he was just on rails. Him and the car together on rails in the wet. These are his conditions, man. So you can't take anything away. Tremendous talent, and a great drive. And if this will eventually go into the annals of his Hall of Fame career, which he's going to get to, it's just a matter of the counting stats at this point. But you're going to see this one a lot because he was putting that car in places where nobody else could. He was finding lanes where nobody else could, and he was making overtakes that nobody else could. So for all those reasons, Max Verstappen, easily driver of the day.
Yeah, 100% agree with you on that one. This race was the return of Supermax, and he made it look easy. He was already flying through the field on the first lap, and once he got to the front, he just opened up that gap in really nasty conditions. So I was very happy to see this result. I've been waiting for a Max win here for a little while, and I kept thinking, man, maybe this will be the weekend. I thought he was going to get it in Dakota after getting the sprint win, and that one didn't come to fruition. And I thought maybe he'd get it in Mexico because he has tons of wins in Mexico, and he seems to really like that track, and that one went really awry. So it was really good to see him get this race win in, and hopefully put the last nail in that championship fight.
All right, very good. All right, so we shall turn to our predictions. As we told you earlier, our lap times went out the freaking window. The dry lap times were nowhere near where we thought it was going to be. I literally thought FP1 and they'd already kind of smashed the track record, and I'm like, oh, that was fast. And then the wet quali lap times were way too slow for what we had. So, yeah, it was just, we knew we were trying to hedge there, and it just didn't really work. But, Cody, you got 3 points on the weekend. You did get P1 on the podium for predicting Max. Nicely done there. You got P1 on the sprint podium for predicting Lando. Good there. And you got the quali time because you were slower than mine.
Not slow enough.
But slow enough to get the points, is according to our little rules here. So good job there. I do, however, win the weekend. I did get 4 points. I got the pole sitter. I got Lando for that. I got technically the fastest lap time because I was slower than yours, even though we were both like 7 seconds off. I did get P1 on the sprint podium because I had Lando there, and I got P3 on the sprint podium thanks to Max's penalty. So that's actually what does it. So you're going to be mad at that penalty for another reason here. I got P3 on the sprint podium, so I take the weekend 4-3.
That one did make the difference, but I'm just happy that I called the Max win.
No, very good to you there. Yeah, like I said, good stuff all the way around on all of that. All right, so we will now take yet another little break. I think it's well-deserved for all of the mechanics, for the logistics people, for the TV people who've done this triple headers. We just got to get rid of these things. I mean, it's just crazy. However, I will say you this, Cody. We managed to pull it off 6 for 6. I didn't think we were actually going to get all 3 previews and all 3 race reviews done, but well done to us. Yay us for that. Woo! So we're going to take a little break, and then the insanity really starts because Las Vegas is coming with all of the good, the bad, and some of the protestable that comes out of the Las Vegas GP. But it looks like, we'll see kind of where this goes. We still got constructor fights to talk about. If Max spins out, maybe the driver's fight comes back online a little bit. But I'm not rooting for that. I don't want to win a championship that way. But that's just me personally. But so we've got Vegas, we've got Qatar, and we've got Abu Dhabi to close it out. Our Abu Dhabi coverage is going to be kind of interesting because Cody and I are actually going to be in Las Vegas at that time. So he's getting married. We're going to be celebrating his nuptials in Las Vegas, and we're not exactly sure what we're going to do. So we may have to, the final Abu Dhabi thing may come out a couple days afterwards, but we're going to have to plan that out. Maybe we'll even do something from the room. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But anyway, we've got some things to figure out on our end. But thank you. If you have made it all the way to the end of this, thank you for sticking with us. We don't do this show without you guys, the listeners. Our regulars are awesome. Thank you so much to everybody, like I said, who just interacted with us all over the course of this weekend. We will be back in 2 weeks' time for the Las Vegas preview. We'll set the stage for that race, and then we'll be back to recap all of the craziness that is probably going to happen at the Las Vegas Grand Prix. Sure, there's lots of fan engagement and all that other good stuff. We'll try to talk about it all. So for Cody, it's been Andy. Damn, Formula One gives it to you, baby. And may all your laps be fast.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Outlap F1 podcast. If you like what you heard, click that subscribe button and be sure to leave us a 5-star review. If you want to connect with us outside of the show, check out our website at www.outlapf1.com. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at outlapf1 podcast, or email us at chatnow@outlapf1.com. As always, thank you so much for your support, and we'll see you on the next one.